All right, folks, we're going to be working on the Unit 9 database design uh, exercise, which is basically to normalize this table, create a database and an entity relationship diagram based upon this table of information. As one of my students discovered, this table of information is not text, it's pasted here as an image. And so I've added the data file here in its raw format of a comma separated value file. And what I would like you guys to do is to go ahead and download that file to your computer so you have it in your downloads. Meanwhile, go to your email and then go to your Google Drive folder. And hopefully you guys are sort of there. When you get to Google Drive, go to New and create a new Google spreadsheet. Now we're using this as a tool basically because it will work really well with the comma separated value file. We can do all of our work here and then we can just screenshot the stuff and drop it into the Word document, to show the progress that we're making. I'm hoping that we have enough time here to finish this today. And I'm just saying this up front. If I don't, I'll have to record kind of like the extra part of it later and add it to the video or do a separate video. If you want to title your spreadsheet, let's just call it DB normal, if you will. All right, just to keep it nice and simple. When you're inside here, assuming that you've already downloaded that CSV file, you can insert that file. And I'm trying to think here, is that the way we want to do that? No, we probably want to come here to data and import it. And I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this, folks. All right, let's just go to this entry here. And I know that I'm like, all right. So I was trying to remember where you go to import a CSV file, and I'm looking like in all the wrong spots. And apparently, you just go here and do an import under File. A little too easy. All right, find your download from your local system, and for me, it is here. And because I filter the newest ones on top, it's right at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that import. So now they're asking for an import location. They're saying a new spreadsheet. I'm just going to insert a new sheet. The separator type, we know it's a comma, but we'll let it detect automatically. And it says convert text to numbers, dates, and formulas. I'm going to go with the default settings and just and take what it's doing. We'll see how it goes. If the import's not what we want, we'll stop it and redo it again. So here goes the import. And let's see how it opens up. All right, so there's the table of information as it appears in the assignment. Okay, now if it helps you to kind of like, color code stuff and kind of make it look like that table, go for it. That's not really critical. What I do think is probably more important is making sure that your columns are laid out neatly. So for example, if stuff isn't fitting in a column, you can click this little divider here, double click to kind of widen it out. And if you want to do the whole table at once, you can click the little corner icon, double click, and then readjust all the column widths, right? And that's just to make it look a little bit cleaner. All right, so this is our table of information, and we're being asked now to normalize it. Since that means altering what we have, right, in a process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the sheet that I'm on. And I don't know if you guys saw how I did that, but the tab where I opened up my data, I'm hitting the little down arrow and then I'm duplicating. And then I'm going to rename that spreadsheet, and I'm just going to call it 1NF. So for first normal form. And then let's review kind of the rules for sort of doing that. And once again, I have this like whole jumble of windows here. I'm trying to like arrange myself around. All right. All right. Let's look at the document that gives us the instructions. And I think we're here. There we are. And I'm just going to zoom in ever so slightly here just so we can see it a little bit better. And let's read the instructions now that we have the data. It says, in this step, transform the table of unnormalized data into first normal form. The rule is remove any repeating attributes to a new table. This process is as follows. Identify repeating attributes and move these repeating attributes to a new table together with a copy of the key from the table, assign a key to the new table, underline it, and then the key from the original unnormalized table always becomes part of the key of the new table. A compound key is created. All right, so let's kind of do that step. All right, so first, let's take a look at the information and decide what information is repeated or redundant. All right, so I'm looking at this and I go, all right, well, I have an employee number, right? And I'm trying to look at the original data here as well. So where's the original data? So here's the original data and the way it's laid out. So I have the project code, the project title, the manager, the budget, the employee number, name. All right, so you see a project manager and an employee name. Those are kind of confusing, right? So what pieces of information do you think here I could pull out that are redundant and boil it down to a simpler table, right? So this is a little bit of a kind of a mind bender initially, right? Until you kind of see the pattern of it. Could I, for example, are you guys noticing that I have, for example, like project code, project title, project manager, project budget, and then I have employee, department, and hourly rate. Okay, so the first thing I think about is, all right, well, I got these first four columns could really be a separate table. This is all my brain thinks, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take these columns. So I'm going to do this over in Google Sheets. And I apologize for all the bouncing around here because I'm losing track of where everything is already.
You'll have to unlock your device first.
Thanks, Google. Yeah, this is why I silence my phone, by the way.
Opening.
No, don't. All right. So I'm going to take basically these four columns, and I want you to watch them. I'm just taking the columns for right now, and I'm going to move them over here, right? And then I'm also, and actually maybe I shouldn't cut them. I'm just going to take those four columns and copy them and paste them over here. The other thing that I'm thinking about is, should any of these maybe be a key field? Now, the project code seems like it could be a key field, right? So that's a possibility. And these are all basically project related. And then, and I'm noticing that some of the stuff didn't transfer well in terms of the text. Did you guys catch that? This project budget was misspelled. So the OCR didn't work as great as I would have liked. Right. And when I look here at the redundant information, what unique pieces of information am I finding, for example, in the project code? All right. So I see one piece of information which is this one. That's unique. I see another piece of information, this one, which is unique. And then I see another piece of information, which is this one, that's unique. Okay. So I'm really only seeing 3 unique pieces of information in this column. Right. And I see blanks. So that tells me that this column is being inefficient. So I'm really seeing 3 different projects. And then when I look at this code, the 010 or whatever it is, it's all pension systems, right? So that's going to go here, pension system. Then for the 45, it's a salaries. And for the 64, it's HR. All right. And then I'm going to make this column a little wider, that one a little narrower. All right. So we're seeing some of the efficiencies here, and I'm trying to get some of this to scroll nicely, but it's not. But what we're going to be left with here ultimately is just the stripped down data, because I'm going to get rid of the original table when we're all said and done. Now, we have the project manager, which is kind of listed as, and you'll notice once again, this is redundant information. So all of these have the same piece of information. So I'm going to take the project manager and put them here, right? So the salary system has H. Martin. The HR system has K. Lewis, right? And then there's a budget. Notice those are also repeating values. So the pension is 24.5. The salaries is 17.4. And the HR system is 12,250. Okay, so this part of the table has basically been normalized to first normal form. What you might want to do, and I'm just throwing this piece out there, and I see that last time Christian taught this and he used this form, he separated out, so he did project manager, first name, and he did project or PM last name and split them out. So in other words, so this would just be M, that would be H. We don't know what the full name is, but we know the initial and K. And then this just becomes Phillips. This becomes Martin. And this becomes Lewis. Okay, so the project information, I'm going to say, is pretty normalized. All right, so what that allows me to do here is now I can go over here and I can just delete these 4 columns and see how I'm highlighting them. I click on the column and just drag across, right? You want to be in this mode, right? And then I'm going to right click and I'm just going to delete those columns because I've already captured the information. Is that smart to do? Well, I can always go back to the raw data here if I forget. The reason I'm doing that is I just want it cleaned up a little bit. So that's the one table is cleaned up. Now the other table where I have the employee number, the employee name, the department number, and maybe I shouldn't have gone so hastily and gotten rid of this, right? Why? Because I'm still going to need to connect these together. How do I know which employee is working? I need to keep that project code. So here's kind of some of the secret sauce, right? This information here, the name, the budget, and the title are all available here, right? Through that code. So what that's telling me is I can really remove those 3 columns. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to get rid of them. All right. So now I have the project code, which connects me here. So just to show you kind of how I'm thinking about this, I'm going to make this column a little bigger here. And I know project code is listing as 2 separate lines. But the way I see it is this is our primary key. And you can see maybe I should put that in parentheses. I'll say primary key, right, in the project table. That's unique, right? And so this key identifies us with the other information. So over here, in this table, and once again, I'm going to consolidate the lines here. It's Alt Enter if you want a separate line, by the way. So this becomes a foreign key for this table. So FK, right? It's a foreign key because it connects us to the external table. I'm going to put parentheses around that too. Okay. Now, in order to make a unique primary key for this table, I have two choices. I can add a column, right? And come up with a, I don't even know what the correct name is here. This is like a project employee ID or something like that. And then that can become our primary key. And I'm going to mark it as such, right? That's one approach. Another approach is if I wanted to form a composite key, I could take, for example, this column that has a foreign key, combine it with that column, which has a unique, seemingly unique employee ID attached to it, right? And I don't know if you guys are picking up on the pattern here, but like, for example, Smith, Jones, and Lewis are working here. Jones is working there. Smith is also working there, but Gilbert's working here, and Richards is working there, right? And so really kind of the employee ID combined with that could also form a primary key. So that's a possibility, right? But I think it's better to actually have separate IDs that auto increment. And so I would just do something like this for each record. I would just drop in a number like that. That might be one approach, right? Okay, so that becomes our primary key. This becomes our foreign key. Now, with this table, right, you'll notice that for each foreign key, we have, the people that are working on it. But I also have all of these that don't have any entries now, right? What does this relate to? I mean, this is kind of the grand question. When I look at this particular item, is it related to all three of these people? And then is this information the same as this information? You see the conundrum here? So because we've already put it into first normal form, we can actually delete these rows. This is where it gets a little weird, right? So you would have to double check this, of course, to make sure it's correct, but I assure you it is, right? So I'm just removing those rows. Be careful when you're removing rows because this table, if it was existing in the spot where I was deleting rows, I would have been deleting that information also. Not a good idea, by the way. But I'm doing it like this. I'm trying to keep all the tables on the same screen, basically. Right. I'm also seeing some other issues here. So the same thing that we did here with first name and last name, we could split this column. I'm not going to take it to that level, but you could do that, right? Any other redundant pieces of information here? All right. One thing that I will have you correct here, this thing that says IS50 really should be 1850. So my import saved us a little bit of time, but not all that much. Okay, so that's all fixed now as well. And then ultimately, I have a few here that are kind of repeating. And are they repeating correctly? So in other words, do I already have A Smith on this project? I do. Do I already have B Jones on this one? I do, right? And so we're removing all the redundant information. So basically, those three columns can go too. So then we're left basically with this table. So here's first normal form, folks. All the redundant information is removed. Stuff that can be put in a different table was put in a different table. And then it was basically linked back with the primary key. And if you find it helpful, you can make that like bold, I guess, right? Kind of like that. That's first normal form. So the way I would put this back into your Word document now is I would suggest, right? And this is one way to do it. You can just screenshot this, copy it, and then just drop it right in here. Press enter. And now I don't know if you guys are noticing it's not quite fitting, so you can make it a little smaller, right? And then go back to your spreadsheet, and then you're going to screenshot that. And so where's my snipping tool? There it is. Oops, but I wasn't ready for it quite yet. There we go. And then I'm going to grab this little table there. I just want it copied, not saved. And then that will get pasted in that window too. And once again, try to make them fit in that little box if you could. So that's part one. Right. Part two is to move to second normal form. And it says transform the data into second normal form. The rule is remove any non-key attributes that only depend on the table key to a new table, ignores the table with a simple key or no non-key attributes. The process is as follows, right? Take each non-key and ask the question, is this attribute dependent on one part of the key? If yes, remove the new table with a copy of the part of the key. It is dependent upon becomes the key in the new table underline. Okay, so all right, to just kind of like take it to that next level, then what are we going to adjust now to take it to second normal form where we're removing any partial key dependencies? Okay, so this gets a little kind of goofy here. So what I'm going to do here on my spreadsheet now is I'm going to duplicate this again, and this time I'm going to rename it to 2NF, right? And then we're just going to tweak the tables as they sit. Now, part of this, right, is we have these primary keys that we've set up. We have a foreign key that we've set up. And are we really looking at, okay, so for example, here's kind of my grand point. When we're looking at this piece of information and we want to connect it over to this table, the foreign key in essence will do that. The employee key that goes with it, how do we trim that down? So in other words, do I need to have the employee information and the department information and their hourly rate, all like all this stuff in the same table? Do I need to have that all in the same table? And the reality is no, because the employee ID will give us who the employee is. You see the right, the concept there, and their department number. So in other words, I need a separate table that just has, well, let's see, what's unique to the employee number, the employee name, what department they work in, and maybe what the department name is. Okay, and I could see that as being normalized even more. So that becomes one table also. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to insert some columns here, and I'm going to start moving my stuff over a little bit. So I'm going to take this information and I'm going to actually copy that and I'm going to paste it here, right? And I'm recognizing, okay, employee number, name, department number, and department name. Okay, I'm going to leave that information all together. Therefore, this table here, the one that has the project information, it's got its own primary key, now we have the employee number. Now the employee table is going to need its own primary key. So I'm going to add one here. I'll mark that in bold. So that's going to be the primary key for this table. That's unique. So then in this table, that becomes a foreign key, right? And if you want to make that bold also, you can do it. Just helps you see it a little bit better. But I don't need to have this information here now because I can get it from this foreign key. See the strategy? So now I can remove those three columns, and then I'm left basically with the primary key, the project code, and the employee ID or employee number and the hourly rate. So you see how the information now is a lot more efficient? Right? And you guys are like, no, that might be your answer right now, but that's okay. But this is, folks, second normal form. Second normal form. All right. So to screenshot these, so once again, we can go into our document. Right, this is the right one. And then we'll just paste those images in here. So let's get that snipping tool going. And so I'm going to grab the one. Here's the copy into the document. That actually fit okay. Back to the snipping tool. Grab the second table. Paste that in. And then we'll go to the third table here. Screenshot that. And that one needs a little size adjustment, but basically it's okay. All right, so there's second normal form. Now, I think some of you might already see where third normal form goes from here. So I'm going to duplicate now that 2NF tab. We'll rename it to 3NF. And now that we have that tab, what is the last adjustment we really have to make here to make this fully third normal form? Does anybody spot what I need to do? Yeah, and I'm not expecting you all to rush and answer it at once. The only other spot where the redundant information is really happening is this department information is really redundant. So the logic, and a really easy way to do this one is just add a column in between there, and that's your table, right? However, right here's the big however, we also need to link this table to the department, right? So the employee's got to be linked to the department. So I can't take that column away. I have to still leave it here at the employee table. And so I'm going to add another column in between and then reset the color here. So this then becomes a foreign key for this table, and this becomes a primary key. Like it's the primary value that's unique, right? That defines that table. Here it becomes a foreign key where it's a primary key in some other location. And that's the link basically from this table to this table. All right. All right. So that your task, of course, would be screenshot all of these, right? And put them in the next entry. And really, because you're only changing two tables, it's really just these two that are pertinent, right? But now we've taken that one larger table of information, and when you first looked at it, you probably didn't think that it could be broken down into 4 separate tables logically, right? But now we have it all laid out. Now that we have it laid out, the next step would be to basically build the database. And we are pretty short on time here, but I'm going to attempt to do it in the time that we have left, and we are spilling over. So we are going to create a new database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close all my SQL windows. I'm going to create a new SQL window. And if you guys can just bear with me here on this process, we're supposed to call it normalize DB. So here comes the first command. And yes, I'm zooming in so you can see it. And I'm just going to do create database normalize DB. Okay. Well, you know what? We want to execute that. I'm just going to execute it. All right. And let's make sure it worked. It sure did. All right. So we created the database. And if you look here on the side somewhere, if you refresh, you should see your normalized database right there. All right. Next SQL command is, well, I have very clearly laid out, and this is, somewhat easy, I suppose. I have 4 tables laid out. I have the primary keys and the foreign keys indicated, right? We can basically see what the data type is. And folks, we're not looking necessarily to inject the database with all this data, but we do want to create the tables. And so the way that I'm going to do this is I do have some code here that I have pre-created. And I'm going to drop it here into my SQL. And I know you guys are not having time to type this in. There's some issues here though, because I have some differences with how I did it. And you know what? I'm going to go back here and I'm probably going to title this project ID instead of project emp ID. I was just kind of drawing a blank on it when I did it. So I'll just call that project ID. And I'm just recreating my first query here because I changed it from the last time I did it. And yeah, I'm going all lowercase because I'm trying to do it fast, right? And we are going to go varchar, I don't know, let's just make it 10. I don't think it needs to be quite that big, but hey, whatever. And that's actually going to be my primary key, not this one. Okay. And then looking here, that's my primary key. Then my project code becomes a foreign key that we're going to have to enforce elsewhere. All right. And then are all these correct? So I have project code, project title, first name, last name, project budget, money. Is that all correct? Not exactly. Not exactly. So you can tell that it which table, okay, the other question becomes which table am I building? I guess I'm building this table and I'm looking at this one, so that's not correct. So I guess that code was correct. So I apologize. Let's Control Z here. Yes, teachers make mistakes too. So project code, project title. We did break out first name and last name and project budget. Okay, so we have all that set. Now what we can do here is we can actually have it execute this code. So I'm going to delete this here. So I'm going to say execute. All right, what does my error message say here? Oh, okay. This is a T-SQL hangover. So what's the right data format for monetary amounts, folks? See if somebody can give me the right. So what have we done in the past? Does this look pretty good? We call it a double. And then do we want to give it values if it's a double? Okay. Um, does this table have any foreign keys? Does not. Okay. Just try it again. Let's run that query. Still giving me an error code. Ah, okay. Yeah, what it's telling me is that I'm not attached to a database. So I created a database, but now I need to use normalize DB. Forgot to do that. So let's do that. Now let's create a table. And now the table's created. So if I expand here and I refresh, I should now see my project table. Okay. If you start comparing, and actually double was probably not the right choice because now I'm looking at these dollar amounts here, and these are all decimals, 10 comma 2s. All right. Can we do a really simple command here just to, let's redo this. All right. So I'm going to do a drop table project and I'm going to recreate it. So I'm just going to run that code. Okay. We dropped it. Did it actually drop? It did. All right. So I'm going to get rid of that command. I apologize. But let's do decimal and do 10 comma 2 because that's kind of what we've been doing all along. So I'm going to run this query again. Single query run. All right. Refreshing. And there's the project table. Okay, so that's the first table. That's the project table. If you prefer, and I'm just saying this, you can always indent this code if it looks a little nicer for you. Now we have to go ahead and create all the other tables as well. So I'm trying to see which one I did next. Next, I did department. That's a pretty simple one. This is the department table. And yeah, I'm going to paste it into MySQL Workbench here. So here is the department table. And I'm following what I did last time, and I'm hoping that this works. Looking at my design document, right? So I got a primary key and I have a name. Looks like 4 digits is good. So I'm just going to go with that. So let's run this query now. There's the create. Next, we're going to do the employee table. And I'm looking once again at this as a guide. I want you to notice that I have at least one foreign key here. So I have to reflect that in my code. So here's the design on that one. Okay, so I got our primary key. We broke it down in the first name, last name, which we didn't do before, but we could. And then we have our department number, which references this foreign key from the department table, which is a primary key, right? So it's the same field. All right, so we're going to run this one. There it goes. Looks like it created. And I'm just going back up here and I'm refreshing just to see if I can see the tables, right? We got one table left to build. And I know I'm doing this with copy paste. Normally I would talk through the whole thing, but we are out of time. And the Python people are already here waiting to cahoots. All right, so the last table, there's that one. Once again, I'm going to indent that. And then notice that one's got a couple of foreign keys coming in and the primary key. They designated it as a combined key, which I didn't do. What I did is I just had a project ID is what I prefer to call it. And a varchar, like a 10 is probably adequate. And that is a primary key. Then I'm going to go ahead and execute this query. All right. And you can see I've peppered in some other values here, but I don't really have time to talk about them. But the whole point is now the database is built. And now that it's built, I can do the same thing that we did before to get an entity relationship diagram. And that is I can go up to the database menu here, reverse engineer, and just follow through the prompts here. And of course, I'm just going to basically click next on most of these, but we are working on the normalized database. And I'm going to say next, next, and execute. And then we will have a diagram of our new database showing all the different tables and how they link together with the same highlighting that we were using before, right? And so remember, we started with one table, redundant, not clear, disorganized information. We took our time and thought about how the information could be broke down. We defined it first. We used the spreadsheet because it was just the easiest way to do it, but you could do it with pencil and paper or whatever is your tool. And then because we had broken it down that way, where we identified our four tables after normalization, coming into MySQL Workbench and writing the code to actually create the tables that created the database and then created this document was a piece of cake, right? But this is the kind of work you do when you're designing a database. I have run out of time, so this video ends here, but that is the solution, folks.